Of course, it's Monday, and political analyst Lukhona Mnguni joins us for a forecast into the political week ahead. It's quite a busy one today with the big story of today's national shutdown. 19 organizations, including political parties and individuals, taking Eskom and government to court. This over power cuts today. But on the other hand, Advocate Billy Downer in court today to try and stop Jacob Zuma's private prosecution against him. So let's speak to Lukhona Mnguni. And Lukhona, let's put you on the spot today. Where are you? Joining in the national shutdown or spending the rest of the day talking to us here on eNCA? Where are you?
Very good morning, Tubelo, and morning to our eNCA viewers. I'm also a bit under the weather. I've been traveling a lot, so not joining the national shutdown. But I think those who want to participate and exercise their rights lawfully and peacefully must be allowed and given the space to do so.
And feel better soon, colleague. But let's speak to you, because I suppose this conversation is to, help South Africans understand why this national shutdown is taking place. Equally important, because we know that some opportunists may take this day to, participate in forms of illegality, criminal activities. And I suppose that's the tricky part here, where the police will have to, make sure that indeed there is a peaceful shutdown or protest according to the laws of this country, but at the same time ensure that there isn't, any criminal activity. What do you make of the plan so far, but Nat joins?
Look, I think it's important that all rights are balanced out, but I have been a bit concerned about the heavy tone of the state, particularly when you hear some ministers talking about regime changes and things like that. We do know that police also do not have a great track record of responding adequately to peaceful protest. And if you remember, Tumelo, as far back as the 2012, Marikana issue, where eventually the Falam Commission came out and spoke quite heavily about what needs to be done to capacitate the police for public order policing. I'm not too confident that everybody deployed to every areas around the country has adequate public order policing. Police can also be very provocative to communities and to protesters, leading up to a standoff and a face-off that could have been avoided. So I think whilst they're worried about the criminal elements that could infiltrate the peaceful protests and then do all manner of things such as, attacking public infrastructure, looting stores and all of these things, I think that we also need to call for great restraint from the law enforcers to act within the parameters of the threats that are present, to not provoke peaceful protesters unnecessarily, and just to not, stand in the way of peaceful protest, particularly keeping up within the spirit and letter of the Constitutional Court's judgment on the Gatherings Act.
Yeah, and that's precisely what I suppose the EFF's concern has been, to say, is the state trying to create a narrative, that the national shutdown would be violent? Is that the kind of narrative they're trying to use to deflect from the issues which they are calling for, the resignation of the president, as well as for rolling blackouts to stop? So let's touch on that, because that is what this national shutdown is all about. Do you think it will be effective? Will it send the message that it's aimed for, and will it, receive their desired outcome?
Well, I suppose the national shutdown is intended to do far more than what the demands are in terms of what has been tabled. The demands are simply convenient to allow you to organize. But I mean, if you've been listening to a number of people interviewed this morning, people who are participating in the shutdown, people are participating for a variety of things. People are agitated by their lived experience and conditions that are, affected by a poorly performing economy. They are unable to get jobs. There was a youngster elsewhere who was saying, he is 25 and he finished his degree in 2018 and he has not worked a single day, and that's why he's participating in the national shutdown. So I think the national shutdown provides an avenue for a number of expressions beyond what the EFF has put on the table. The other thing that we don't talk about this national shutdown is that in actual fact, it could provide an avenue just to switch on, the pressure valve and let out some pressure of society. There's nothing that is as dangerous as a society that is understrained, and there are no outlets for that strain, for that, feeling pressured and agitated to do something about your condition of life. And that's why some people write about things such as leaderless revolutions and so on. So while we might be concerned about the national shutdown and what it means for other people, it might just be providing an outlet for people who are massively frustrated. And if their frustration is not coordinated and channeled, it could explode into our lived experiences as a country in ways that we may not be able to contain. At least this one was quite anticipated, Tumelo. Unlike the July unrest, where, it was wildcat just one morning and so on. This was anticipated. There was a date put in place. Everybody could plan around it. And I think that there is a positive to that. Will it send a message to the establishment? For some strange reason, I think government has been more shaken than it ought to have been. Panicky and all of that, maybe panicking because of its own lack of capacity to really safeguard the entire terrain of South Africa, which is why there's the deployment of the South African National Defence Force. It's quite clear that what the president is communicating on a day-to-day basis, were there to be massive countrywide unrest, the police would not be adequately resourced to do that on their own. That is a worrying institutional capacity issue, because you don't want a country where your soldiers can just roam the streets at the first instance of calls like this for a national shutdown. Because Tumelo, I do think as we move towards 2024, and 2024 is seen by different people as a breakthrough moment, possibly for political change and so on. The ANC itself, as we saw it marching in the city of Tshwane last week, is quite clearly also employing a strategy of protest that is intended to make your presence felt in a space. And if you make your presence to be felt in a space, it means that there will be a sense of a shutdown and so on. But I think the point has been made by the EFF. The country is under massive strain. Society is not adequately prepared in terms of what would it mean if there were to be a social implosion in South Africa. If we just, having businesses shut down today on quite a planned shutdown, a heavy security presence on the streets, how much more on a day where it would not be planned, it would not be, not as enough lead time as given. And I think for me, the biggest message is to realize our points of fragility as a country and begin to ask ourselves serious questions. How do we address those points of fragility, and how do we make sure that people's anger and frustration is at all times coordinated to avoid social implosion?
Well, in the interest of time, we'll leave it there, colleague, and thank you for weighing in on this and talking to us about this top story today, the national shutdown. Lukhona Mnguni, host of the On the Spot right here on eNCA, weighing in on, of course, what this all means for you, the South African.